Hello and welcome to Piece of Pod, a podcast brought to you by South Coast law firm Warner Goodman. I'm Sarah Whitemore. I'm an employment lawyer and senior partner in the firm with over 30 years of experience. In this podcast, I'll be having conversations with law firm partners, business owners, clients and other contacts of mine, and we'll be engaging in conversations about running businesses, career journeys, and how to excel in the world of work. So if that's of interest, why not grab yourself a cuppa, get yourself comfortable, and let's dive in. Today I'm joined by a client, owner and manager of Lapis Care in Meon Valley. It's an in-home care provider, Liz Blacklock, and she is also CEO of the National Association of Care and Support Workers and is at the forefront of a campaign to see care workers registered in the same way that nursing staff are. It's a reflection of her previous career. She had 30 years as a nurse, nursing in the NHS and finishing up within the NHS as a practice nurse. So a lot of things there to unpack, Liz. But first of all, welcome to the podcast. I'm delighted that you've come to join us today.
Thank you.
As you'll know from watching the podcast previously, we like to talk a lot about people's career journeys on this podcast. So can we start by talking about your career journey?
Well, essentially, as you said, I mean, nursing, I think, right from the year dot, probably was the thing I kind of wanted to do. And I remember as a child reading all these different... I've always been an avid reader. Even now, I devour books. But I mean, all these career books, and it always came back to nursing. I remember seeing a whole series about nursing. And anyway, so I did apply for training as a nanny, but I'm so glad I didn't do that.
So as a little girl, were you wearing your nurse's outfits?
I've got pictures. My little, I can see. I think it was probably my 4th birthday, maybe my 5th birthday. I've forgotten. We were living with my grandmother over Christmas because we were between houses, and I think that was the year I was given my little nurse's kit and my little bag and stethoscope. Yeah,
same sort of age I was given a nun's outfit.
A nun's outfit.
That didn't play out for me.
I didn't know there was such a thing as a nun's outfit.
No, absolutely. But there you go, you had a crucifix and everything.
Did you have the whole?
Habit and wimple.
Yeah.
So is that what you did when you first left school? Then you went straight into nursing?
I did. Yes, I was never particularly academic at school. Was that, partly because I wasn't academic and partly, not particularly inspired. But yeah, so I originally trained. I went to college and did a pre-nursing course at Canterbury, and then I applied, and I think I got into 3, and I moved to Southampton because I have family down here, so it was quite nice, My mum's family were down over in Leamington, so I moved here. I applied and did the enrolled nurse training. I was an enrolled nurse, which is the good old-fashioned bedside, because I wasn't particularly academic. And anyway, so I did the enrolled nurse training, which at the time was only 2 years, and then no sooner had I qualified than they started to phase them out. I got a job. It was a job on a rheumatology ward at Southampton General, F8. Wouldn't have been my first choice, but there were very few jobs. Literally, this was in 1988. I then went off travelling to Australia for a bit and did, found my way around there, came back, worked in surgery, and at that point I did what they call the conversion course and upgraded my training to registered nurse or RGN level. And then again, stayed surgery 4 years and then gradually worked my way out. And in those days, you had to have a career pathway. Nowadays, nurses can pretty much go where they want to go and start where they want to. But in those days, you had to have a career pathway, and it was either elderly. If I was always community, I did 1 week of community within the first year of my training and loved it, absolutely loved it. And I knew that was where I wanted to be. And it was either in those days you either had to do palliative care or elderly care to find your way out. So I went with the palliative care because, and then so I worked my way up from surgery out to palliative care, community nursing, and then I had got married, had children, and then I went back to practice nursing because I decided I didn't fancy. I used to work in Portsmouth, and obviously Portsmouth, lots of houses, sort of key safes behind doors, behind bins, and I didn't really fancy that. But I decided, no, I'll move on, so I went to practice nursing. They can come to me.
So some different things
yeah,
there.
So all primary care, but so I had a good grounding. But it was community care, I think, where the community in Portsmouth where I started to get a feel for the social care sector.
Right, and we'll come on to that in a second because that's obviously where your business is. But in terms of the nursing, so you talked about enrolled nurses and registered nurses, and what do we have now? We have sort of degree level nurses.
Well, so nowadays, not long after, there's been a number of iterations of nursing. So enrolled nurses were a 2-year training course. In those days, it wasn't university per se. Southampton was a university hospital, but there was something called the English National Board that basically prescribed the training, and then the schools of nursing then had to deliver that element of training as devolved by the English National Board. So it's a bit more like an apprenticeship type? Well, I suppose nowadays, they've just brought in something. In the last couple of years, they brought what they call in nursing associates.
Okay.
What goes around comes around, and I thought, well, I've heard that before. So essentially, it was lesser qualifications. It was meant to be more bedside nursing. So you had your auxiliary nurses, which were non-clinical bedside nursing, the basic hands-on, but didn't get involved with the medication and the more, the higher level nursing. Then you had your enrolled nurses, which is what I was. It was a qualified nurse, but again, not quite the responsibility. So I couldn't manage a ward or anything like that. And then you had your registered nurses, your RGNs, the old word SRN. And then they phased out the enrolled nurse training, and you just had that one level of nursing, which is the registered nurse. So
all nurses are now registered, are they?
All nurses are registered nurses, but now they have, in the last couple of years, they've just decided, I think we need a second level of nurse, because actually not everyone is destined. I said I wasn't academic. I genuinely don't think if I would get into nursing now. I would question whether I'd want to get into nursing now, actually, because it's very much high level, very management driven, very, very little patient care, and I've always been a people person. I did a little bit of intensive care, high care nursing when I was on the wards. I hated it. Absolutely, I hated theatres because you don't have that interaction with the people. Everyone's under anaesthetic or ventilated, and you can't really communicate. I absolutely hated it.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you go back to the little girl with her nursing outfit on, I wonder what sort of nursing she thought she was going to be doing. Was she playing with dolls and thinking it was paediatrics, or was she... What sort of nursing?
I don't know. I can't remember actually, but I think I probably wasn't thinking it was paediatrics. I was playing with dolls, but I wouldn't necessarily think paediatrics. Just people. Just people. Yeah. I used to prey on the adults as well. I used to go up and, the grannies, the uncles, the aunts, and,
Everybody had a bandage on, did they?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Everybody was tucked up in bed with a thermometer sticking out of their mouth. Yeah, I remember those days too, with your own little plastic set. So what were the sort of significant milestones in your nursing career for you? What were the things that you achieved whilst you were doing nursing?
Well, I was always at school, again, I was not a great achiever. I was always told I would ever achieve much, which was a bit red rag to a bull to me. So I got a degree. I did an Open University degree. Okay. Not a master's. I've never been that academic. I could be bothered to go do anything else. I thought, no, don't you tell me that. So I think I did my enrolled nurse. I then went and converted. I then did this Open Uni, what they call an open degree, which it was a public health type thing. So I kind of found my way. And through the Open University, and it was based in a Bachelor of Science, because I was never very good at science. I thought, yes. And that was it, really. And then I think I've just done various courses and found my way out. And I think that was probably my major achievement. I mean, again, in nursing today, it's probably not the greatest achievement, but yeah. And then, really... I think just practice nursing. I mean, I was never a ward manager or anything. I've probably never been the most confident. I mean, this is actually way over and above. I never even thought I'd see myself doing this, to be honest. But I suppose probably starting a business, because that's the other thing, is I wanted to start a business. So, yeah.
And I'm really interested in people who've set up their own business, because you set up Lapis Care.
Yes.
So did you just wake up one morning and think, right, this is it, I now think I'm going to go into this?
No, it wasn't quite like that. So I was working on the community, and in those so we're talking back in early, I have to think about 90s, I think, probably. Late 90s, I beg your pardon. So I was working, it was still in the days of the old 0 hours contract, the social care was at its worst, where you had carers running around tearing the hair out, trying to be in 3 places at once, and I'd be in a patient, as they were then, not a client, a patient's house, doing whatever I was doing, and I'd go, the carer hasn't turned up today, because they were trying to be in 3 places at once.
So you were there as
and
the
I was there as a
community
community nurse doing my clinical stuff, and then they were either late or or we'd get my carer hasn't been for 3 days, etc., because they were having to be, the classic 0 hours, 3 places at once, travelling. You can imagine trying to get across Portsmouth City, which is not easy at the best of times. Yes, and I just remember thinking, it's got to be better than this. It's got to be a better way. If that Jack and Stem meant, it's got to be a better way than this.
So you then set up your own care business, and did you steer away from 0 hours?
Never done 0 hours. I wanted to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And actually, didn't quite start out that way, and it wasn't immediate either. There was quite a gap even then, but that was my sort of my trigger point, I think. I then when I had the children, and then it wasn't really until I was at the surgery that I just thought, I've got to do this. We had questioned whether to start look at a care home, and we looked at a couple of care homes, and there were just property prices. It was just not sustainable. And then we set up like a consultancy, which was like sort of nursing, and I did a bit of going around and just supporting the surgery and gave some injections and fluids and that kind of thing. And then actually we just, do you know what, let's just do it. So we went for our CQC registration, 10 years, 2015 it was.
Okay.
2015. But we got our CQC registration on April Fool's Day.
Very fun.
Yeah.
So your type of care is different. You were talking about thinking about buying a care home,
yes,
which is where somebody moves in and they live in that home and they're cared for there. But you're going into people's houses. We go into
people's homes. So basically, I think a lot of the problem is social care in a lot of people's minds is residential / nursing homes. They forget that, the social care is so diverse. You've got supported living, learning disability, you've got residential, you've got nursing, you've got, there's just a wealth, and then you've got domiciliary, which is us.
And it's interesting because, as you know, my mum has dementia.
Yes.
And she is actually now bedbound,
yes.
and she needs a lot of care.
Yes.
And when she lost her mobility, we had a conversation with my dad and said, I think it's time she now needs to go into a home.
Yes.
And then I spoke with a friend who's a social worker in elderly care, and she talked about, does your mum wander off? Well, no, because she's got no mobility. Yes. Does she, all the different risks that she might have.
Yes.
Went through all of that, and she said, well, she doesn't need to be in a home.
No.
She needs more care in her home.
Yes.
And so we have a care company that comes in 3 times a day to see her, and she has that comfort of being
at home
in a familiar surrounding.
Yes, exactly. And I think the thing with dementia as well is that moving into a new accommodation can severely exacerbate the dementia. And actually, so I think, provided they're able to provide, and am I right in thinking does she have 2 people at a time? If she
does, yes,
because she's not mobile, so the moving and handling. And I think having a really good supportive caseworker is really helpful. Yeah.
And of course the NHS provide an awful lot of stuff to support people in a home, because they don't want people coming out of their home into care homes. So she has a hoist and all sorts of things within her home.
There are lots of, I had a meeting with my our MP, I should say, Danny Chambers on Friday, who's been very supportive, and he's asked me to do a bit of work on the price of a care visit or care package compared to the price of a hospital bed. Because there's a lot of, with all the funding at the moment, there's no capacity, they're saying. That's not true. There is capacity out there. I have capacity. They're not prepared to pay the proper prices in order to allow someone to be at home. That's the problem. Now we're getting a bit political, but to say there's no capacity is not true. The problem is the funding.
Right.
Because I have capacity to take people, but because the way, and you go back to the 0 hours contract, I've never done 0 hours for the reason I said, is I want to sleep at night. It didn't make any sense to me that actually juggling staff, having the travel time, Someone wants to go out and do a good day's work. They start at 7 in the morning, finish at 2. You pay them from 7 to 2. To me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, so I was paid, and I'm going back to that. My shift work at the hospital, it didn't even cross my mind, and that was one of the things we were very specific about when we set up the business. Is that I'm not doing that.
So with the 0 hours contracts,
Yes.
what would happen is someone starts and then perhaps there's a gap in their day and they don't get paid for that
exactly.
part.
That's exactly it. Or they're sent from here, there to everywhere. Then 0 hours, you're only paid for contact time. And one of the local authority model for funding is that they will only pay you for contact time. So they will say, we'll pay you for £18 an hour, as an example, but that particular client, who's a local authority funded client, only needs half an hour. So we're only being paid £9 for half an hour. Now, given that the national minimum wage is £12 an hour, and there's all sorts of overheads, encompassed in that, how is that even? It's not possible.
And when I think about my parents, so we have carers come in 3 times a day,
Yes.
morning, lunchtime and evening.
Exactly, yeah.
I imagine everybody wants morning, lunchtime and evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore, late morning, late afternoon,
absolutely.
there's no need for carers because...
So it's up to us to make sure that the packages that we take on, and we do have gaps, and it is up to us to make sure those gaps are filled, so their time is filled. We don't send... So many people have come to me and said, well, they work for companies, and a lot of companies as well, and I've got to be careful because I don't want to land myself in hot water here, but they will give a staff member contact, but they'll find that actually, so say I want a full-time 37.5 hour contract, but they will still only pay them for the contact time with the client.
Right.
So if you're still only being paid for the contact time, if you're trying to get 37.5 hours of contact time, you almost need to work double in that week to get your 37.5 hours. Does that make sense?
Which is interesting because obviously from my perspective as an employment lawyer, I'm looking at the Employment Rights Bill now. And obviously the government have said they're going to ban exploitative 0 hours contracts. There's going to be lots of things around compensation payable for shift changes, guaranteed hours, looking at the pattern that someone's worked for the last 12 weeks.
Yes.
All those sorts of things are going to shake up, I think, the care sector in particular, where there are still a lot of 0 hours contracts.
Yes. And I think there are still 0 hours, and there are also companies that only pay the contact time, and it is going to be hard, I think. And one that I'm really glad that we've done. I had a conversation with a colleague actually. She sent me some issues that she was having over the Christmas period, and I just thought, I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that, because I know we have a policy that we all go out. I mean, we pay double time on Christmas Day, but nobody wants to work Christmas Day, so we all go out and do 2 hours work. All of us, including myself and my husband, directors of the company. So we have a registered manager, so I don't manage anymore, I direct, so to speak. But we all go out and we all do Christmas Day, a couple of hours that a lot of clients will cancel, but we all go out and do a couple of hours, and then it gives us the day free to spend with our families, and then on the whole, people other than work Boxing Day or New Year's Day.
Yeah.
But that they're paid at double time for Christmas Day. But it might only be a couple of hours, but
Yeah. So you've got obviously a lot of experience of care, running your own in-home care business. You've also, we talked previously about your care for your daughter, your care for your parents. You've got experience as a user as well as a provider.
Yes.
So can you tell us, what does good care look like?
What does good care look like? It looks about communication, relationship building, trust. I think they're the key things. It's being able to have a conversation, an honest conversation with family members. I think it's about honesty, and I say honesty at meeting. What am I trying to say? Honesty about realistic expectations. I think the thing is that social care is misunderstood a lot by people in the public domain. People don't understand what it means, and I think it's explaining what it means. As you said yourself, everyone wants certain times. That we can only be in one place at a time, on the whole. So not everyone can. It's about relationship building and compromise and understanding. We will do our best, but please understand. For instance, we have a 20-minute window either side of our care call. So because traffic happens, tractors happen, you can't, with the best will in the world, things happen. You can't guarantee, and people don't understand. I want you here at 8 o'clock. We've done our best to do that at 8 o'clock, but if you look at your contract, there is a 20-minute window because you're in somebody's house. You have no way of predicting what's going to happen in that home at that particular time. You don't know what you're walking into. And that was one of the things I really underestimated, even as a registered professional when I started the business. You don't know what you're going to walk into. And you can't just drop everything and just, and people don't understand that. And actually, would they want you to drop everything if it was their mum?
Yes.
And I think that, so it's about realistic expectations, being honest about what social care means, honest about what social care costs, and I think good care, and then just building those relationships.
And obviously a lot of it comes down to good carers as well as your business, but the actual individual carer being a good carer. And I wonder to what extent we properly fund the carers. Often we're looking at people who are paid a national minimum wage and we're expecting the highest level of support and interaction, and we want them to be as a family member, but we don't want to be paying for it. So
I know, and that's
a bit of a challenge, I imagine.
That all goes into that misunderstanding about the true cost of care, because people don't understand that, they think you're just going into, they don't realise that when somebody goes in to do care, yes, you're ostensibly going in to do personal care, but you're looking at the whole scenario. You're looking at what's the setup, medication, how is things, are they 100% today? Something's not right today, and your gut instinct is kicking in. And as you're right, and a lot of people going into care, some people just want to go in and do a good day's work, have a really good relationship, really come away feeling they've had a really good day. Other people want to climb that career trajectory. And I think that's offering social care as a career now, which never was historically. I probably maybe would get on to social care now if I had a choice, not nursing, because in those days it wasn't really a thing. I think and it then comes back to recruitment practices, and I'm working on a whole heap of stuff at the moment with colleagues, with my NACAS head on, around safer recruitment and safe practice with employment. There's a lot of misinformation about, and this is what I'm hoping I can do with Kath Dixon as well. There's a lot of misinformation about what you can and can't do in a reference.
Yeah.
Because actually Regulation 19 of CQC is all about ensuring your staff are trained properly, that they're verified properly, and at the moment all we've got is the DVS certificate, and our gut instinct, a couple of references which often say, as you know, next to nothing. How long they worked with you, have they been sick in the last 2 years, and then whatever your face-to-face interview is. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. And it's really hard.
And we hear a lot in the press, don't we, about when care goes wrong.
Yeah.
If
never hear when it goes right. Only hear when the care goes wrong.
We hear of, if people have been abused, or if there's been some sort of crisis in a particular care home or whatever, we hear that in the press. We don't hear about the good care stories, do we? But when we do hear about people who've been abused by carers that are not of the standard we'd like, it makes me wonder about registration, something that you're particularly passionate about. Yeah. And you mentioned NACAS, that's the National Association, let me get this right, of Care and Support Workers.
That's right, yeah.
And you're the CEO of it. And through that, you're trying to get the same sort of registration as we talked about for nursing staff. So it's right that at the moment, carers are not registered.
We have a register. We do have a register. So just to give you a little bit of context, Scotland, so the devolved countries, the United Kingdom, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, all have mandatory registers for those working in care. All of them. You have to be registered to work in care in every other country but England.
Okay.
Don't ask me why. And that has been the case. I have to say, I've only been really with NACAS for 2 or 3 years, so I'm not quite sure historically how far back that goes. And they're all independent. So the Welsh Register and the Scottish Register are not necessarily the same. The Welsh Register puts a bit of a barrier in because they are education based, which is no bad thing. But in order to be registered within Wales, you have to have a level 3 apprenticeship, which is actually really quite academic. And it goes back to what I was saying about not everyone wants to be an academic to go into care. Not everyone is an academic to go. They just want to go out and do care. So that is a massive barrier. So I have to say, I don't think Scott. I don't want to say too much. I'm working. In fact, I'm going over to Ireland in the new year because that's, I think, our closest benchmark, to have a meeting with them about how they do it, and there it's the Northern Ireland Social Care, NISCC, and then again the Scottish is something else. But Northern Ireland, I think, is something that we're most aligned to. So we decided 2 years ago, we're working with the Institute of Health and Social Care Management, which is an academic institute that, again, seeks to improve anyone working within health and social care to in training and education and general things like that. We decided actually to partner with them and think, let's just do it. So ideally, the registry in England should be mandatory. We know there's been a lot of ambiguous, not ambiguous, that's not the word, antipathy. That we don't think, and the governments consistently have shelved it. They've never really explained why. I think it probably comes back down to funding and the expectation maybe that people are going to expect, with registration comes professionalism. With professionalism comes a higher level of education, funding, pay, everything. And I'm not saying that is the reason, but...
Just to be quite clear about this, the organisations are registered, so you would be registered, say, with the CQC that you mentioned earlier, the Care Quality Commission.
We, as
an organisation, you are,
but
not the individual carers.
And that's where a lot of misunderstanding comes in, I think, that people think that you've got the CQC, but CQC only regulate providers. They don't regulate all providers, they don't regulate agencies. Okay. Like anyone who's introduction, not all care. If you not all live in care companies, they're like an introduction agency. They're not regulated. So it tends residential homes, supported living, nursing homes, domiciliary care, GP surgeries, but a lot of these. So those private carers who just literally work for what they call micro providers, they're not regulated. Okay. Which is where the fake carer thing came in a couple of weeks ago. There was a fake carer hit the press where a carer was operating privately, so she'd gone out and found some clients that then paid her friend to go in and do the care, which and it all just hit the headlines, and from a register perspective, it actually played right into my hands and thinking, well, there's your answer, because it's frightening, really frightening.
So it's quite scary then, as a user of these services, to know quite where you should be looking, or what type of organisation you need to support your parents or whoever it is you're looking for care for. Whereas the idea with the registration scheme is that you would be able to see who it is that you're using. And
yes. It's still very embryonic. So essentially we have and at the moment we only have the DVS, the delightful DVS to go on.
And tell me about that. What's the concerns with DVS?
Well, DVS essentially, once you have your certificate, so good practice for all care providers best practice I should say, is to get everyone on the update service. So annually, and again, it's not a perfect scenario, but every year individuals will pay $13. It's cheaper to do it this way. £16. It's just gone up to every year. They go on the update service, so that DVS is reissued annually. Mm-hmm. So provided there are no major issues on it, it would be done for another year. But the downside with that is you have to apply for that update service within 30 days of your certificate being issued. And if that you're done, unless you reapply, unless you get a brand new, unless you're going to pay another £50 and get another certificate, that's it for 3 years, or until the next update. So good practice on those providers is to put their staff through every 3 years to redo their certificate and get them to annually state that there's nothing changes, to say there's nothing changed on that we should be alarmed about. And there comes an element of self-regulation, really, that they have a duty to inform their employer if there's anything that we need to be concerned about.
So the DBS check, just to be clear, it's giving you a snapshot on the day of the DBS check what their record was.
Yes.
It's looking at their criminal record.
Yes.
It will also look to see if there's any reason why they've been barred from working with vulnerable adults or children or whatever. But it doesn't necessarily tell you what their experience is as a carer or
not at all.
how they are as a person. It's just a snapshot of that.
And once that certificate's been issued, then essentially someone could go out tomorrow and create a major crime, and it's not going to be reflected.
But they've still got their certificate.
They've still got their certificate.
Okay.
So if the update service, then that would be, again, updated the following year, and again it gets duty bound for, which is where the safe recruitment comes in, and the application to the Protection of Vulnerable Adults Register. But that is, thankfully I've only had to try and do it once. It is a minefield, and it's bureaucratic, and I failed. I had to let somebody go for gross misconduct, and I tried to, and the system kept locking me out.
Right.
It was just...
So that person effectively would be free to go and work somewhere else because
absolutely.
their DBS check
and I hate that. It just makes me feel ill. But,
and your registration scheme would be different from this?
So essentially my registration scheme, it again, because it's voluntary, not mandatory, it's got to be mandatory, but which is obviously where it's enshrined in law. But in the short term, there's going to be an element of self-regulation on the part of employers and on the part of individual carers. So essentially, they would apply the DVS at the moment. I'm talking this particular moment in time, but I'll tell you more about how we're working towards that in a moment. Is that it's just the DVS, which is really not great, but it is what it is. So it's how they would have a PIN number. And then basically it gives an element of reassurance to someone that if someone has gone to the bother going on a register and putting their hands up and saying, I want to be seen as professional, I want to be recognised as a professional, and it gives an element of trust. But by no means it's not the only answer. So we are now working with a company called Me Passport, which is My Employment Passport, which is an initiative that was set up by a company up in Essex as a digital verification system.
Uh-huh.
So they really rigorous, a lot more rigorous, where they have to be on the update service, where they go through all the digital identification stuff that various big organisations use, and goes into a lot more depth. And then we are working with them. I have a meeting with them on Friday to see how we can partner together. Because what we need it to be that we're all using the same system, that we're not fragmented. There's no point in us using one system and then using another. We all need to be working together.
And so then with NACAS and with Me Passport,
yes,
and the government?
Well, the government, then, I mean, I think in time, essentially it's about making the government sit up and listen, saying, we're all doing all this work for you. Why would you not? I mean, I'm hoping that when we've done a lot of the work, then they've got no reason. They've got no reason. And again, it's all about making those connections. I've now made several connections that have connections with DVS. I'm hoping in time, but the DVS legislation is all heavily enshrined, and that takes time to change.
It does.
It takes time to change, and we haven't got time to change. We've got to do the best we can. The other part of this Holy Trinity sort of thing is we're also working with the Professional Standards Authority, which are the regulators that regulate the regulators. Uh-huh. So they kind of, and again, it's voluntary, it's not mandatory, but it's another stepping stone, is that the word? Another layer of reassurance for people that we're following an element of prescribed safeguards, that we will follow their safeguards. So in the sense, even if it doesn't become mandatory, then we've done the best. We've mitigated as much risk as we possibly can, and in time, people will just want to go, and almost become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they will just, why wouldn't you go on it? And I had a conversation with one of the organisations, and she said, well, Liz, it means all the naughties, if it's not mandatory, all the naughty people won't go on it. I said, well, no, that's very true. You're not wrong. I don't disagree. But it begs the question, if you're not on it, why? Mm-hmm. Why are you not on it? If you want to be seen as professional, we want to be seen as, standing up there and holding, I am a professional person, I take responsibility for my actions, I'm accountable. Why would you not want to be registered? And I think the problem with care is because people don't have that understanding. You and I, you're registered, we have professional bodies. It's like Blackpool Rock, isn't it? It kind of runs through you. And it's really hard to quantify to somebody why they should do it. It's really hard to explain what's in it for me. How do you say what? Surely it's about what you feel inside as a professional person. It's, when I've never ever not been registered. Even when I had my children, I had my break, I did enough to tick over that I could keep my registration. But when I wasn't working, there used to be an old advert, I think it was for Learn Direct, and they used to be on TV, and it was like a jigsaw piece that was missing.
Okay.
Out of the, and I remember that's how it felt for me. And when I went back into practice, I felt this jigsaw piece had slotted back into place.
So you're still registered with the Nursing and Midwifery Council, aren't you?
Yeah.
And yet you're not nursing or doing midwife?
No, I'm nursing, I'm social care nursing, and I managed, it is a bit harder, and I have re-registered this year, and I have to say, I did have to think, can I do this year? Have I got enough in me to be able to demonstrate that I can, that I can be registered in terms of education and professional development, etc. But I did do it. Whether this might be my last year, I don't know. In terms of that she runs enough, because actually again it will come. I think probably next time, because of all the work I'm doing around this, I probably will manage it again. The question will I, when do you stop?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, we're not long since past the general election with the new government. I think we can still call them new whilst we're still in 2024. Perhaps it'll be a different expression we use next year. But during the general election, the cost of social care was one of the things that was a bit of a political football, and they talked about it. Successive governments have recognised that there's a problem for the country as a whole in terms of the cost of social care. But they don't seem to be able to grapple it or to respond to it or resolve it. Why do you think that is?
I think it's just too big a chestnut for them to deal with, and unfortunately, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. I think we all feel very let down, this even more so this time than previous times. I think almost with previous governments, the previous incumbent, you almost kind of expected it. You weren't surprised if it happened. This time, they made a real thing of social care before they got into government. And I was at a Care England conference where Liz Kendall at the time was the social care shadow minister. She came and gave this whole speech. And I came away thinking, gosh, wow, really? And I feel, and I've spoken to Organisation Skills for Care, I've spoken to other organisations, and we're all holding our hands up and thinking, what they don't understand. It goes back to what I was saying about this whole deficit. If they address social care, then half their problems with care, with NHS, will disappear. Because if they just recognise that social care is part of the thing is they put together two departments with the word "and." They joined it with the word "and" didn't actually think that actually the "and" meant something. And unfortunately, all this they're committed to the National Care Service down the road. I don't quite know how that's going to look, because we're not like the National Health Service, because most providers are private businesses. And they're not even willing to engage with us. That's the problem. They're not, and I understand. We know I also went to a meeting, the Times Health Summit earlier this year, and Wes Streeting was there then. And I came in thinking, do you know what? I respected him at that point. He said, I'm sat at a table like this with all my colleagues, and saying we all want the same pot of money. And he said, I've got health. I said, I'm health. He's got education. You've got defence. We're all saying we need the money. He said, there isn't enough. And I thought, I have respect for that, because he's right.
That just isn't the magic money tree.
There isn't a magic money tree, but then it's almost like I can't even get the words out to them. They've just completely just shut their minds to it, and it's really frustrating that they won't even engage. And I think that's the hard thing. And they don't seem to understand, and especially with all the new employment laws, while I think I'm really fearful from the new employment laws, generally in small business, and also in the care business. I know that the Care Providers Alliance recently have done a survey, and they've said 20% of potentially of care providers may just shut up shop. people are not going to be taking local authority clients because they can't/won't. Local authority won't pay me. And they can't because the funding does not cover the cost of the employment.
Which is a common thing across. If you look at, say, childcare, for example,
Yes, exactly.
that you hear that time and again, don't you? People saying
yeah.
that you're not paying us what we need to provide the childcare, even though you're saying to parents you can have free childcare or whatever.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's interesting as well. You talk about the National Care Service. If we go, and you said, we're all private businesses, so how's that going to work?
Yes.
We go back to the sort of, would it be 1950s when the NHS...
1948 was
right?
National Care Service.
National Health Service was set up, and of course a lot of the doctors and so on, they were private businesses.
Yes, absolutely.
Back then.
Yes.
But we're now in 2024, not 1948, and I just wonder... If we turned the clock back, would we do the NHS the same way that we have? Because we're now left with a situation where it costs an awful lot of money, and we're constantly talking about how many billions we need to put into it. And so talking about starting a national care service now, not in 1948, I'm not sure which government is going to be confident to do that.
No, I think the Labour, again, it's like, the Labour government has said, it's going to take about 10 years. It's like the Conservatives said, we're going to fix social care, didn't they? And then it kind of all got... And I think as it becomes more evident, the frustrating thing is they have so many people saying that if you just engage with us and talk to us and just look at the funding, you will find that half the problems, the people in hospital will be able to come out of hospital because actually the funding will be there for the carers
so
to go
and do.
It's the
holistic picture that they need to be looking at.
Exactly, it is. But but also we understand there isn't a magic money tree, and I think the people have to, the conversations now, going back to our situation where people only start to think about social care when it's needed, unfortunately, and that is an indictment of the times. So now we talk about powers of attorney, don't we? There's a big thing about how important it is to have a power of attorney, health and financial. We talk about wills. We talk about how important it is to have a will, and if there's no will, how complicated it is for the family. Social care has to be on that agenda.
Right.
Care has to be on that conversation with families. You need to have you just have an idea of what you want to happen. Because if you, and working with your power of attorney, my dear dad, bless his heart, before the dementia, he set out his power of attorney. He wrote a whole essay on the back of his power of attorney about what he did and what didn't want to happen. But have that conversation.
Yeah.
So your family, so when you're in hospital, for whatever reason, have that, so your families haven't got that worry, what would mum want, what would dad want?
Yeah.
Because it is huge, you've got all that stress, and then you've got that additional, you've got the doctors talking, the nurses talking, what do I do? Have the conversation, write it down, put it in a drawer and forget about it. And plan, do you want to be at home? Do you want to be at home? Would you prefer because the thing, home is good, home is wonderful, but also it can be quite isolating. Home is not always the best answer. I'm not going to say, obviously I go into people's homes, but actually it can be quite isolated. People can become very isolated. Do they want to be at home? Would they prefer to be in a more social situation of a residential home? Because domiciliary, I've tried to set up social situations, and it's really hard to get the footfall, and again it comes back down to costs. I tried on a day service, but we didn't again the funding. It just is really hard. So if you're more social, home is good, but it isn't always the answer. But have that conversation, and then write it down, and then when the time is right, put it in. It's there. You've done it.
Yeah, and in an earlier episode of the podcast, I spoke with Karen Walton from our private client team. She works with wills, trust, probates, all that sort of stuff, but she also does guardianship and deputyship. And so she was talking a lot about the whole use of powers of attorney, and particularly in health and well-being. And it's really quite easy to get one. It's really quite easy to set them up.
It's really easy to get one.
You don't have to use lawyers. You can just go online and do it and register it. But I guess the harder piece is having that conversation. Whether it's you for yourself saying, I've got a health and wellbeing. My daughters have the power of attorney for me.
Yes.
I'm only 57, so I'm thinking I don't need this for another 30 years maybe. But perhaps having that conversation is more
It's really
important than
hard,
actually having a
yeah.
bit of paper.
Yeah, there's another thing as well, is that we think about mental capacity, don't we? But we think about people not having mental capacity because they've maybe have a brain injury or they've been affected by dementia, limb dementia. But actually what we forget is you only have to go into hospital and have an operation. You don't have mental capacity because you're under an anaesthetic. Something happens, God forbid, within that anaesthetic and you end up ventilated for a couple of days. You don't have capacity to make your decisions for you. That's when your power of attorney comes in. It doesn't matter how old you are. You could be 20, and that comes in. So it doesn't. So age really is irrelevant, and people forget that. The other thing to think about is also doctors now, and another really hard conversation. It used to be the DNA CPR. It's now called, and my brain is just, oh my word,
The purple
respect
form.
form. The respect form. So it's basically, it's how far do you want to be resuscitated if the worst was to happen? So in hand with your power of attorney, with your will, with your, comes this what you call respect form. And this is a really hard conversation because actually, if something happens to you, it could just, and it tends to be when somebody's maybe older and, they've got perhaps a chronic condition like asthma or COPD or something, and they get a chest infection and they become really poorly. COVID was a classic example. Become really poorly. And obviously you can have viral or you can have bacterial. Now, if you're on bacterial that's treatable with antibiotics, viral isn't. But actually you become really poorly, you have to be hospitalised, and you're just not getting any better. So where the DNA CPR is do not resuscitate, is actually what you call the hand-on CPR, the really emergency stuff. Not pleasant. It's not a pleasant procedure. And thankfully I haven't had to do it very often, but I've witnessed it and it's really unpleasant. And there's no dignity. And if you can imagine, am I getting a bit in depth here? Do you want to cut this bit? Because it might be a bit personal for people and stressful, but it's not a pleasant thing. But actually, that's not just about that's what we call the old-fashioned resuscitation. The respect form comes into more generalised. Resuscitation could be fluid. If you're dehydrated, you're resuscitated with fluids to make you better. You're resuscitated with antibiotics. But actually, if the antibiotics after 2 lots aren't working, and what's your quality of life like? Where do you stop? Comfort over quality. Do you want your life to be comfortable, or are you there for the long haul? And you want to be there for as long as, no holds barred. I want the lot, and that's what the respectful. And that's a really hard conversation. But again, it goes with your power of attorney, and we encourage everyone, all of our clients, if we can, to have that conversation. And again, it goes back to mum and dad in hospital bed. You know what they want. You know what their wishes are. Then all you've got to do is focus on being with them, and whatever those moments, whether it's them getting better, whether it's them maybe not getting better, but you're with them and you're not having to worry about all that taking up in your brain that space. And
it is interesting actually, because I somewhat naively thought that for my mum and dad, they're still together, they've been married for 60 odd years, whatever it is. Mum has lost mental capacity. I just assumed dad could make decisions for her. Not even after 60 odd years of marriage. So we've had to have best interest meetings, which are quite complicated.
Yes, they are.
In order to make decisions that you would think would be fairly straightforward for dad to just say, yep, no, whatever it might be. So it's definitely something to have a look at, isn't it?
And I have a confession here, because I've got power of attorney for my daughter. I haven't got one for me.
Well, now that's something to go home and do.
There you go.
Then,
so I've said that in public now. So my husband and I are going to go home, and my son is home visiting at the moment from his travels. So I'm going to go home and get that sorted, because it's really embarrassing.
Give yourself a Christmas present. That's what I say.
Bang on about it. And so there you go. Hand up in public, social media. There you go. There it is. But it just proves the point, because I'm in that that naive. I'm young, don't need it yet. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do.
Well, it's like, GPs who smoke and lawyers who don't have wills. It's all the same bag. It really is. So during your career then, you've been employed. You were employed as a nurse within the NHS and you have employed. So is there anything we can learn from your different experiences on either side of that?
HR law, I think I've said this to you, it terrifies me. It absolutely is the thing that I can feel myself churning. I haven't actually watched your podcast with Kathy yet, because just the whole thing just makes me feel. And I think, what have I learned? I think to do things right costs money. it's really important to have a good package like yourself. I used to be with a bigger competitor, and it was horrendous. And I think it's basically you didn't get any continuity. And one of the things I came to was that, you know, I had that continuity. You start to feel it ill. You need to have that discussion with somebody. When you're nursing, I remember there were a couple of things that we'd stick in the brain. If you don't know it, don't do it.
Right.
If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. And that's really resonate all the. I am not an I don't know it. It's very complex. It's getting more complex, and it's so important, you know. And I think provided you've got all your foundations in place, those benchmarks, then you're fine. And don't overthink it, which is what I do all the time. But you know, use the people. I think, and you have to. I think by having that, then you should be fine. But make sure you address things early, and use the resources that you've got at your disposal, and don't try and do it on your own.
Yeah.
Because
so
it will
for the
backfire.
benefit of our audience, you have our Peace of Mind membership. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly. Yes, I do.
Where we will prepare your documents for you and we review those for you,
Yes.
but where you've got access for legal advice whenever you want to, whenever you need to call us, Liz. You're welcome to call us at any time, as you well know.
Yeah.
But it's having that person in your corner. And as you said, you know the team, and you know during the course of your membership you've got to know each of us, and you've got that continuity of care, which is what you then replicate in your own business in a different way.
And I think it's just making sure that because things just change so quickly on a 6 months, don't they? And you know we've had calls to call you over the years, and I think also it's having that the additional benefit of CAP is amazing, because I think, you know, the law stuff is great, but having that conversation, and you know, so you can just chew the fat and think and talk things through and think, and those wise words, you know, and you can come away and thinking, and how you address things. And the thing is, I think probably in hindsight, I'm too soft to be an employer. I really am, and I probably shouldn't say that in public either, but I just know that it's one of the reasons I gave up the registered managership, because I know I'm a pushover. and I find it really hard, and it is really hard, and to be not assertive, but just to be straight down the line. And it doesn't mean you could try so hard to do right, you end up doing wrong, if that makes sense, because you know you fall into a bit of a minefield because you're trying so hard to get it right that actually you miss something completely and you get it wrong. Yeah. So. And
Kath and I, you know, you mentioned her a few times, we try and be a little bit of a double act. Yes, so I can provide the employment law side of things, but she provides the HR hands-on practical support, and that seems to work well for a lot of our clients.
Yes.
Well, we're coming to the end of the podcast now, so any final words of wisdom, any top tips you'd like to share with our audience?
Any top tips? Plan your care. Plan it. I think that's the most important thing. Find a good, if you're needing care, then use various websites to get good feedback, feedback in terms of people's experiences. Be realistic about what it costs. And unfortunately, people are not just out to they're not just out to make a fast buck. It's about paying staff. It's about having a good provider, and unfortunately, that does cost money. See how they treat their staff. I think they're probably the best fits, but fundamentally have the conversations as well with family and friends.
And it's one of those areas, as you say, where you take some guidance from other people. Recommendations are really important. But I think also there's a sort of a gut feel for how you connect with the company that you engage with.
And don't leave it, because going back to the powers of attorney, obviously, if someone isn't able to have that conversation because they don't have capacity, you've missed the boat. And don't leave it to the last minute, and don't do what I'm doing.
No, you do it when you get home, Liz.
Yeah.
Meantime, as ever on our podcast, we've got the audience-sourced question.
Oh.
So yours is in the envelope here, Liz.
Right.
So have a look at that and let's see what you make of the audience.
Ooh. If I could relive any one day of my life, which would it be and why? Oh gosh, that's a bit of a question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have I got long to think about that? Off the top of my head, oh golly, do you know? Any professional, personal?
Whatever you like, Liz. It's your question.
Probably my wedding day, actually.
Oh.
Probably my wedding day. Yeah, magical.
Did you get married in this country? Or
I got married in this country, up in Kent. Yeah, up in Kent. We lived next door to the church. And everyone thought we were in the vicarage. We weren't. And literally, my dad, an accountant, there wasn't any really to have a reception to it. My sister did the same. We had a marquee in the garden. We were lucky enough to have a big garden. And my father-in-law, sadly no longer with us, he was a Rolls-Royce enthusiast, and he lives in the northeast, Graham's in the northeast. And he brought his car down. He had a Rolls-Royce in 1936, I think it was, 300 miles down the road to drive me next door. And I remember my father saying in his speech over the accountant, he said, you could see that Gordon's not an accountant. He said, because no accountant would drive 300 miles down in a vintage Rolls-Royce to drive his daughter-in-law next door. And but it was a magical day. Yeah,
day filled with memories.
Yeah,
and
full of memories, and people no longer with us, and Kent is close to my heart. And actually, in the days when I now work with my husband as business partners, we've been married 28 years, and it's been tricky. That's another thing is, it's hard, and it takes a marriage and working together is hard. And I think, but when I think back, that's probably my wedding day.
And would you do it all the same way, or would you...
The care company or the wedding?
The wedding.
Yeah, I would actually. Yeah,
and the care company?
I love care. For me, oh dear, I'm going to open up. For me, my passion is now the bigger picture. It means a lot to me now to try and get those make those connections, get people to do all the things I've spoken about here. I love the fact that I've been able to do it, and I love the fact we have had 5-star feedback. All our feedbackers, we've won top 20 for 4 years consecutively to the homecare.co.uk website, which is where it puts you in the top 20. So we're in the southeast of England. I think there was something like 1,600 care companies in the southeast, and we're top 20, and we've done that for 4 years consecutively, and I'm really proud of that. And that is down to I'm not taking credit. I'll take a bit of credit. But it's down to the team, and it's down to my RM and the amazing team that we've got, and it has been tricky. Would I start up a care company in this day and age? I don't know, to be honest, because I think it's going to get hard. And I think things have got to change before, and it's really sad. So I don't know. I love the fact that we've done it, and I love the fact it's something I can tick off my list that I've done. I set out to do, and I've done it, and we've done it well. We have done it well. The other remains to be seen. For me, my passion is the bigger picture.
The bigger picture.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
I'm fascinated to see your journey on that.
Thank you.
And come back and tell us all about it once you've got that registration.
Yes, I'd love to. Well, the register is in place. Can I just say, register is in place. vcpr.co.uk. Anyone in care, please do register. It is £20 now. It's not. We were free. It's not cost sustainable to make it free. Like anything, there are costs involved. We've tried to do it as cheaply as we can, but anyone working within care, please register. It is so important. We've got 400, which is a drop in the ocean compared to how many people work in care, but it's 400. It means it's gaining trajectory, it's gaining momentum. People are becoming aware of it, but we need as many people on it as we can. Because as much as we need to do some theoretical research, which I'm talks with Organisation Skills for Care, going to do some research, I believe. But that's the qualitative research. The quantitative research, which is actually people proving that they want to be seen, recognised, is people registering. So please register.
There you go. Please register, everybody. And meantime, Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode. I hope you found it insightful and empowering. To stay connected, why not hit the subscribe button? Or if you think your friends might be interested, why not rate us as a 5? To be first to know about upcoming episodes, follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram and LinkedIn, where you'll find us at Warner Goodman LLP, or follow us on YouTube, where our episodes are at Piece of Pod. Thank you again. Until next time.